So thank you everyone for coming and marching today. I was asked to speak about the history or Palestinian education in the context of Palestinian history and culture. So I'll just be speaking for a few minutes about that, going actually back pretty far in time, but then moving into the present. Already back in 1980, Palestinian anthropologist Khalil Nakhleh underscored the importance of storytelling for Palestinian resistance. Nakhleh argued that the loss of Palestine in 1948 gave a special importance to education as a way of connecting Palestinians across diasporas and creating a space for political transformation. Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish, who all of you should read if you haven't already, made the same point about the relationship, the importance of education in poetic terms when he wrote in one of his last works, "As we don't know the difference between a mosque and a university," and of course he's writing in Arabic and drawing on the fact that the Arabic word for mosque, masjid, is very closely related to the Arabic word for university, jameh. We don't know the difference between a mosque and a university because they are from the same root in Arabic. Why do we need the state, since states pass just as surely as time? Darwish pinpoints the poetic as well as the spiritual affinity between the university and the mosque in Palestinian culture. What both institutions share in common is their ability to call into question and to sometimes undermine worldly power. And I think that's the role that universities have played in Palestinian history. The central political importance of universities for the survival and flourishing of the Palestinian people is borne out statistically in terms of the high literacy rates, remarkably high, relative even to the Arab world and also in global terms. According to the Palestinian Census Bureau of Statistics, in 2016, the literacy rate across the West Bank and Gaza was 96.9%. And just consider that in the context of all the incredible hardships that they face. That's really quite extraordinary. It's actually, yes, it's higher than Israel too. According to UNESCO data, the literacy rate increased to 97.4% in 2019. So you can see from that alongside their struggle for liberation and self-determination, education has played an extremely important role. But by comparison, during the same period in Israeli society, the literacy rate is 92%. As Palestinian scholar Esmat El-Halabi has argued, genocide begins with the idea of genocide. So this means not just that spaces of intellectual inquiry often serve as incubators for ideologies that lead to genocide, but also that when genocide is perpetrated, it targets the spaces of learning first, because these are the institutions that incubate the most effective and longest lasting means of resistance. And of course, we've seen this in the case of Gaza, where all the universities were targeted to the extent that now there is not a single university building left standing, although I do think it's worth saying that even though the physical infrastructure of universities has been completely demolished, that doesn't mean that people in Palestine and in Gaza, in their tents, are not pursuing their education. They're getting PhDs, MAs, writing theses, all from their tents. So education is continuing even without the infrastructure. Absolutely, it's to inspire us all. And I just now want to turn to, I like to tell the story of my relationship to Palestine through specific people. And so there's one specific family in Gaza that has really taught me a lot about the importance of education. And that's a family of a girl named Lujane, who I've talked about in previous rallies here. And she is both a wonderful writer and a very talented embroiderer. And I'm actually wearing something that she has created the past couple of months. And she's pursuing her education from within the tents of Palestine and learning to become a wonderful writer. I talked about her stories before. And there was one really important line that she has in a story she wrote about being her maybe third displacement back in April, where she says that let me get that quote. We are resisting with what is I don't have the quote in front of me, but she says that we are resisting as Palestinians with what is more important than weapons, and that's education. And she comes from a long line of people who have pursued education. Her grandfather grew up in a refugee camp in Rafah, and then worked for UNRWA and became a history professor in Libya and Egypt, and ensured a bright future for their children and children's children. And when I spoke with her uncle about asking him, what does education mean to you, he wrote, and I'm quoting from an email of his, he said, "Universities and schools will always be in our minds and hearts. We are firm believers that education is the strongest weapon we can ever have, and we intend to maintain it." Yes, and the line from Lou Jane is, she wrote a few months ago, "I don't know if the war will stop while we're still alive. Thank God, let's hope the ceasefire holds." Hopefully they are alive, thank God, and the war has persisted. But yes, she says that what matters is that there are many people resisting with what is more important than weapons. For this family, as for many Palestinians faced with genocidal epistemicide, education, it's more than just a means of social advancement. It's a means of keeping alive their personal and collective history, and of resisting the settler colonial suppression of their language, their culture, and their way of life.